Section 8.3, we talk about zero and negative exponents, okay? The zero exponent property. It's the easiest of all the exponent rules. Because if something is raised to the zero power, anything raised to the zero power, the answer is 1. Okay. Examples: the number 5 to the zero power, 1. A negative 5 raised to the zero power, positive 1. Always positive 1. Anything to the zero power, be positive 1. If you had something with several variables, kind of similar to what we've done with the power property, maybe you had 5x squared y to the third, all of that with parentheses and a zero power outside, still 1. Anything to the zero power is 1 by definition. Even if you did, that's not a very good circle. That's a better one. It's a basketball. What is that? It's a basketball to the zero power. Anything to the zero power is 1. It's not multiplied, it's an exponent. Okay. And the thing you got to understand about exponents, and if there are 0 of something, then the number system that we deal with is the base 10 number system. And base 10 number system, you got digits, you got the ones place, the tens place, thousands place. It's all based on powers of 10. But this is the 10 to the second power. This is the 10 to the first power. This is 10 to the zero power. Like if you had the number 365, that the hundreds place, there's 300 here. So that's 10 squared. There's 6 times 10, 60. So that's 10 to the first power. There's 5 individual ones there. That's 10 to the zero power. The base 10 system, we have to have a definition for those ones places, and that definition is the power of 0. Anything to the zero power is going to be 1, always. Okay? That's what you've got to know. Anything to the zero power is 1. Okay. Now, let's get into a little bit more difficult thing, and that's negative exponents. And with negative exponent property, the way that I teach this and the way that I do this is I ask you to do all other properties first. So work everything else before you start doing anything with negative exponents as far as fixing the negative exponents. All right. What we want to do is end up with all our answers have our positive exponents. So if there's a negative exponent in the beginning, we're going to have to fix it. But there may be some other properties that we may have to do. We may have to add exponents because we're multiplying things with the same base. And then we might have to subtract exponents if we're dividing and have the same base. We might have to multiply exponents if there's parentheses with an exponent outside. But you do all of those things first and then fix the negative exponents. The reason you want to do that is because if you fix the negative exponents at the beginning and then you do those other properties, you may end up with negative exponents again, and you got to fix them again. So it keeps you from having to fix the negative exponents 2 or 3 times during a problem. You just do it once at the end, okay? So you do all of the other properties first, and then you fix the negative exponents. And the negative exponents are like you have some base with a negative exponent. the way you make something like this into a positive exponent is you move it to the denominator. An example of that, we'll call this example E, would be something like x to the negative 2. There are no other exponent properties to do on x to the negative second power. There's no other properties that we have to work with. We've just got to turn this into a positive exponent. And right now, that's in the numerator of a fraction. You could write that as over 1 if you wanted to, and it's the same thing. But to change it to a positive exponent, you move it to the bottom. If there's nothing else in the problem, it's a 1 left on top. Okay. If you had something like this, 3y to the negative 3, or let's do negative 4. Those different numbers. Which part has the negative exponent? The y. There are no other exponent properties to do. So the y is the one that's got to move because he has a negative exponent. So when you move that, you get the y to the 4th on the bottom. It changes the sign when you move it to the bottom. What's left on top? The 3. It didn't have a negative exponent, so we didn't move it. Okay. So that's the way we're going to fix negative exponents, or is we're going to make them positive by moving them from the numerator to the denominator. Okay. There are times, though, when you might have a fraction already given to you, like 1 over a to the negative n. It's already in the denominator, and it has a negative exponent in it. To change the sign, where do you think it moves to? Up to the numerator and becomes positive. Examples of that would be something like you start out with a 1 over x to the negative 3. To make that a positive exponent, it just becomes x to the positive 3. It moves up to the numerator. And since there was a 1 up there, there's nothing else to do. If it were some other number on the top, or maybe another letter, maybe you had x squared over y to the negative 5. Which one has the negative exponent? The y. So it needs to move. It's in the denominator now. So it moves up to the numerator with the x squared to give us x squared y to the 5th. If we had something like this, x to the negative 3, y to the 6th. Where are both of these at right now? In the numerator, because there's not a fraction bar written. We have a negative exponent. We want to rewrite it with a positive exponent. Which one moves? The x. It's the only one that has a negative exponent. So that's the one we're going to move. And that's going to give us what? That's it. It's that simple to fix a negative exponent and make it positive, is move it from where it's at. If you had something, a little bit more complicated, maybe you had x to the negative 2 over y to the negative 4. So we have a numerator, we have a denominator, and they both have negative exponents. So who moves? Both of them. Where does the x squared go? To the bottom. Where's the y to the 4th go? And they change the signs to be positive. So it just flips that fraction over as y to the 4th over x to the 2nd. Fixing negative exponents is an easy thing. You got to do all the other rules first, and then all you got to do is fix the negative ones. Okay. Let's start putting those other rules back in. Let's say we had x to the third times x to the negative 5. What rule do we need to use here first? Add the exponents. So what are the exponents on our variable there? 3, 1, and negative 5. So if we add 3 plus 1, that's 4. What's 4 plus negative 5? Negative 1. Now, our answer when we did that gave us a negative exponent. How do we fix it? Yeah, or just 1 over x. If you put the 1 on there, it's fine. You don't have to. It's understood to be there. But we do that work first instead of fixing it and then having to redo it. Let's say we had something like this. X squared y to the negative 2 parentheses negative 4. What's the exponent property that we need to use here? Multiply and distribute, like distributive property. So that's going to give us x to the negative 8, y to the positive 8. Okay. Kind of seeing why I gave you those 10 problems yesterday after the quiz. We're using that same arithmetic here. Multiplying positive and negative numbers, adding positive and negative numbers. So now, which one of those needs to move to fix it? X, because it has a negative exponent. So we end up with what? There you go. And we've got our answer with all positive exponents, because at the end, we fix the negative ones. Okay. This has got a lot going on, but we still should be able to do this. Remember, we want to do all the other properties before we do the negative exponents. Okay? So if we look at this kind of like two separate problems, do the top part first. What happens up here? Supposed to add, because they're multiplying together, they got the same base. X to the negative 7 times x to the 5th. You add the negative 7 and the 5, which gets you x to the negative 2. On the bottom, we got x to the positive 2 still there. We haven't done anything with it yet. But what happens with the y's? 8 plus negative 3 would give me y to the 5th. So you're adding because they're multiplying together. All right, so we've done the multiplication property with exponents. What's left to do here? So can't move it yet because we've got another property we need. We can do the subtraction property because these got the same base. So we're going to do negative 2 minus 2, which is negative 4. So we really end up with x to the negative 4 over y to the 5th. Anytime you do one of those other properties, like if you do, here we did that, it was in the top only, so we moved it over to the top. If you do that subtraction with your exponents, your answer goes to the top, and then fix it. Okay. With that division property of, or the quotient property of exponents, do your subtraction, move that answer to the top to start off with. Now we got to fix that, right? Because it's got a negative exponent. Where does it go? Does the y to the fifth move? Did it have a negative exponent? It doesn't, does it? So we don't want to move it. If it's already positive, we don't move it. So that x to the fourth goes to the bottom. Y to the fifth was already positive exponent. We're going to leave him where he's at because he's not messed up. Negative exponents are the only ones that have to move. What's left on top? A 1. There's nothing else up there, so a 1 has to be there. Take a little practice. We're going to get there, though. Let's say we had 2x squared, y to the negative 5, in parentheses, with a negative 3 on the outside. What happens here? Okay, so what does the 2 have on it now then? X to the y to the positive 15. So you got to, when you multiply by a negative, you got to watch your sign. So the exponent on the 2 right now is a 1. So negative 3 times 1, that's the negative 3 that's here. 2 times negative 3, that's the negative 6 that's on the x. And then negative 5 times negative 3 becomes positive 15. Okay. Now, what has to move? The 2 and the x have negative exponents, so we got to move them where? To the bottom. So that's 2 cubed, x to the 6th in the bottom. Does the y move? No, he stays up top. There's exponential form. What would that be in standard form? Okay. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. So exponential form, the bottom one is standard form. Okay. Remember, they ask for it in different forms. Exponential form is the one written in blue. The green one is standard form. Okay. Not too bad, not too bad. Just takes those properties that we spent we spent a little over a week on. You got to know those, and then we're adding in that negative exponent rule. Let's throw this one in there. 3x to the 5th y squared to the negative 2 over 12 x to the 3rd y squared. What happens first? Distribute. So what's on top? 3 to the negative 2, x to the negative 10, y to the negative 4. Is there anything to do on the bottom? No, not at the moment. We're going to get there. All right. Now, there's some more exponent work to do, right? Because we got the same bases here. The 3 to the negative 2 and the 12, they're not the same base. So we're going to work with that later. But these are the same base. So we can do what with those? Subtract. Yes, ma'am. All right. So subtract negative 10 minus 3. Negative 10 minus 3 would be negative 13. Yeah, we're minusing there. And then remember, when you do that subtraction rule, your answer goes to the numerator every time. Okay, that's kind of like, I'm harping on that because that's something that I see made a mistake every year. We're trying to make it not be a mistake. Okay, subtract the y's. -4 minus 2 would be y to the -6. The 12 is still down there in the denominator. What can we do with this 3? Not yet. Yeah, we need to change it to a positive exponent, and then we'll make it standard. So if we move that to a positive exponent, where does it go? On the bottom. So it's 3 squared in the bottom. And it's just going to be multiplied times that 12 once we work it out in the standard form. Okay. So from there, is there anything that needs to move? Yeah, both of those have negative exponents, so we're going to move them to the bottom. X to the 13, y to the 6. We know that 3 squared is what? 9. So we end up with 9 times 12 down there. What's left on the top? A 1. Nothing else is up there. There's got to be a 1 there. Okay. What's 9 times 12? 108. X to the 13, y to the 6. That one had a lot going on. You used almost every property that we know. Not quite, but almost. Mm-hmm. It technically doesn't matter when you move it because there's not another piece that goes with it with the same base. So you could have, we could have moved it in instant. Yes, ma'am. All right. Let's look at another one. It's kind of got some stuff going on with it too. 2x parentheses to the -2 times y to the 5th over -4 x squared y to the 2nd. What happens first? Yeah, distribute that -2 exponent. That looks like a good idea. 2 to the -2, x to the -2. Still got the y to the 5th. -4 x squared y squared. Now what? Subtract the things that have the same base. So -2 minus 2 would be, where's that go? Bottom or top? Top. So we've got 2 to the -2, x to the -4. What about the y's? 5 minus 2 is 3. Where's that go? On the top. Always. When you do that subtraction property or the quotient property of exponents, your answer is going to go to the numerator, and we'll fix it from there. So what's left on the bottom? -4. Okay. This x squared and that y squared are gone because we used them in that quotient property. So they're used up. Okay. And then what moves now? The 2 and the x. So 2 squared x to the 4th, and then we still got the -4 down there. What's left on top? Yeah, it didn't have a negative exponent, so we're leaving it up there. And let's work out those numbers down here. So what's 2 squared? 4 times -4 would be -16 x to the 4th, and then the y cubed is up top. We got that in standard form there. I'm working that out. All right. Let's do one more. We'll be done. Get you some practice, because that's what this takes, is just practice and patience to make sure that you're trying to get all of the other properties done first. So the top part is 2x to the negative 1 y squared. And then all of that's in parentheses squared. The bottom, we have a 2, an x, and a y squared. And all that is raised to the negative 3 power. So this one has tons of stuff going on. What do we do first? Distribute. Okay, so that's going to be 2 to the second, x to the negative 2, y to the fourth on top. What's the bottom end up being? 2 to the negative 3. Good. Now, what's the next thing that happens? All right, how many same bases do I have? All of them. Just so happens the numbers have the same bases too. So I'm going to use the exponent properties on those too. So we get 2 minus negative 3. 2 minus negative 3. Yeah, it turns to plus 2 to the 5th. And then on the x's, we got negative 2 minus negative 3. Negative 2 minus negative 3 ends up being positive 1. So x to the first. On the y's, 4 minus negative 6 over 10. Hey, that worked out nice. Do we have to move anything? No, nobody had a negative exponent. What's 2 to the 5th power? (32) x y to the 10. There's the standard form for that one. So, again, if we had moved all the negative exponents at the beginning, we would have ended up at the end having to move them again. So you won't always see somebody teach it this way where you do the negative exponents last, because technically, mathematically, it's legal to do the negative exponents first. But when you do that, you end up having to do it again later. So I always just wait till the end, and that way I only fix negative exponents one time at the end. Saves me a couple of steps, on some problems. Some problems it's no different. But, I think it's better to do the other exponent properties first and then fix the negative ones at the end. Okay. All right. So one other fact that you need to know: if you have the number 0 raised to a negative exponent, that's undefined. So if you had 0 to the negative 3, that doesn't work, because what that ends up giving you is 1 over 0 to the third, which is 1 divided by 0. What's the only number on the planet we can never divide by? 0. That's undefined. That's why it's undefined. Undefined. Just like it was with slope, 0 under the line is undefined. That's what the negative exponent on a 0 creates, is 0 under the line. And 0 dividing by 0 is an undefined operation in mathematics. Okay, so you need to know that. There's 1 or 2 problems where that comes up. You've got to watch out for that. Okay. All right. The practice that you're going to do for this is on page 506, 3 through 26, and then skip 27 and go 28 through 43. And Let's do all of them, because some of them it's just like that first set. It's just moving it. You don't even have to write the original problem down. You just move it to make it positive. Not really any work going on in that in the first few problems, first several problems. Okay, so I think you need that practice to get you going with this stuff. So work on that. Got plenty of time between now and lunch. Almost an hour, not quite.